Hey guys, welcome back to Star Recaps. Today I'm going to explain Prison Break Season 1 and 2 combined. Enjoy watching. At the starting of the series, Michael Scofield gets his whole body tattooed before he attempts to rob a bank. He acts almost as if he is waiting for the police to arrive. When he is taken to court, he pleads guilty and waits to be taken to the prison where he is going to serve 5 years. After meeting his inmate Sucre, Michael sees his brother Lincoln in another compartment. Lincoln has been sentenced to death because he killed the vice president's brother. A flashback shows us the last conversation Michael had with his brother, who told him that he is innocent. Michael also meets Dr. Sarah to receive his insulin shots because he is a diabetic. During his first days in prison, Michael gets to work and plants several origamis around. That evening, Michael goes to the church to meet with his brother, who is surprised to see him in prison. Scofield tells him that he came here to break him out. In the meantime, hints of a plot by the Secret Service are given to the viewers, implying that they are connected to Lincoln's sentence. Scofield introduces himself to John Abruzzi because he needs a card from him to join the ranks of the employed inmates. John's people on the outside receive a picture of Fibonacci, the man who betrayed Abruzzi and sent him to prison. Abruzzi's men jump on Scofield because John is impatient to learn where Fibonacci is located. Scofield will be sent to solitary confinement after this incident, but he cracks a deal with Warden Pope to build his Taj Mahal replica, which he is preparing as a gift to his wife. Scofield is a structural engineer. The next day, Scofield meets C-Note and asks him to get a drug that acts as an insulin blocker, implying that he is not really a diabetic. Eventually, Abruzzi gives Scofield a card to join the rest of the inmate employees. This gives Scofield the chance to spend more time with his brother and talk about his plan. Scofield reveals that he worked in this prison as an engineer when it was built. Lincoln wonders if Michael has seen the blueprints of the prison, but Scofield has more than that. He has tattooed the blueprints on his body. Scofield plays a game of chess with an old man named Cooper, who is believed to have parachuted out of a plane with $1.5 million. Scofield knows that he is going to need money on the outside, so he thinks about using this man's stash. As a part of his plan, Scofield needs an Allen bolt and tries to unscrew one from a bench. The problem is that this bench belongs to T-Bag, a ruthless criminal with a large following of white criminals in prison. T-Bag offers to protect Scofield if the latter becomes his boyfriend, but Michael refuses the proposal. As a consequence, T-Bag takes the Allen bolt from him and threatens Scofield to keep his eyes open. Meanwhile, Lincoln's old love interest and lawyer, Veronica, gets a videotape that depicts Lincoln pulling the trigger on the vice president's brother. When they meet later on, Lincoln promises to her that he did not do it. He approached the car with a gun in his hand, but the man was already dead when Lincoln saw him. He was also told that the guy he was supposed to kill was just a low-life thug. Later, a battle starts within the prison as the white inmates have a rivalry with the black inmates. T-Bag's boyfriend attacks Scofield because he is jealous of him, but Michael steals the bolt from him. Another inmate kills T-Bag's boyfriend, who dies in Michael's arms. T-Bag sees this image and assumes that Scofield killed the young man, promising that he is going to retaliate. In the meantime, Veronica is being watched by Agent Kellerman of the Secret Service because she is trying to learn more about the night when Lincoln supposedly performed the hit. Back in the prison, Sarah runs a test on Scofield because she suspects he is not a diabetic. Thankfully, C-Note has brought him the drug Scofield asked just in time, so the test shows he is a diabetic. Scofield can keep returning to the infirmary for insulin shots since this area is critical to his plan. As soon as he leaves the infirmary, Abruzzi grabs Scofield and requires to know Fibonacci's location. Even though Abruzzi tortures him, Scofield will only give him Fibonacci's location once they are outside the walls of this prison. After losing a couple of fingers, Sarah takes care of Scofield in the infirmary. Lincoln gives Michael his word that he will teach Abruzzi a lesson, but Scofield asks him to stand down because Abruzzi is a part of his plan. Then Scofield reveals that Sucre is also part of his plan. Lincoln prompts him not to trust Sucre because he is a thief, but Scofield has no other choice. He knew before he came here that he had to recruit his cellmate, even though he had no idea who his cellmate would be. Without his cellmate being in the escape, he can't start digging the cell. Scofield needs to test Sucre, so he hides a phone while Sucre sees him. Lincoln tells guard Bellick about the phone, saying that Sucre has one. Bellick presses Sucre to learn about the phone, but the inmate remains silent. Knowing that he can trust him, Scofield reveals the escape plan to Sucre. On the other hand, Sucre is going to be released in 16 months and return to his fiancée, so he doesn't want to risk everything in an attempt to escape. To protect himself, Sucre asks to get transferred to another cell. In the meantime, Kellerman introduces himself to Veronica, saying that he will assist her if she finds any clues that can shed light on Lincoln's innocence. Later, Teabag waits to find Schofield in a vulnerable position so he can attack him, but Abruzzi intervenes because he has decided to change his approach. After beating up Teabag, he tells Schofield that he wants to work with him. Schofield lets him know that he will need Abruzzi to find a plane for them when they are out. He also reassures Abruzzi that they will be out before Fibonacci testifies against him, which will happen in a month. Soon, Bellick introduces Michael to his new cellmate straight from the psychiatric ward, a man named Potoshik. Schofield's plan has already fallen 3 days behind. He considers recruiting Potoshik, but a guy like him can't be trusted. Therefore, Schofield decides to start digging during the night. Nonetheless, this solution is not going to work, since Potoshik suffers from a neurological condition, which does not allow him to sleep at all. Schofield tries to work on opening a hole behind his cell's toilet when Potoshik is absent, but there is not nearly enough time to make real progress. In addition to that, Potoshik starts becoming obsessed with Michael's tattoos because he sees a pattern in them. Michael asks the warden to get Potoshik transferred, but Pope can't do anything about it if there is not an important reason to make that request. Meanwhile, Sucre's fiancée has started dating his cousin and tells him over the phone that she can't wait for him anymore. Outside the prison, Veronica asks for help from the Project Justice organization, but they tell her they have already reviewed Lincoln's case and they are not going to do it again if she does not bring them any new evidence. However, one of the lawyers from Project Justice, Nick, meets Veronica later that day to tell her that he is going to help her out, even though his boss is not going to get involved. Back inside the prison, Schofield realizes that he has to deal with Potoshik as soon as possible. The crazy guy has started drawing Michael's tattoos on paper. After asking Abruzzi for some chemicals, the man brings them to him. He also brings a knife for Schofield, asking him to deal with Potoshik. Sucre finds Schofield in the yard to tell him that he wants back in the plan. When Schofield returns to his cell, he bangs his head on the metal bars to fake an attack from Potoshik. Potoshik is taken away and Sucre is brought back to the cell. While the two of them get to work, Michael explains that the infirmary is the weak link to the prison's security system, so that's why he visits it so often to do his thing. Meanwhile, Agent Kellerman and his partner Agent Hale find out that Schofield is Lincoln's brother. Too many people are trying to help Lincoln, so they should do something about it. Their play is to file for a transfer request to get Schofield in another prison. The Secret Service asks Pope to carry on with Schofield's transfer, but the warden is not going to do it. To change his mind, the agents hand him a file that tells the story of his illegitimate son, threatening that they will tell his wife everything if he doesn't do what they asked of him. Pope visits Schofield in his cell to ask what's going on with him, and Michael lets him know that he is Lincoln's brother, asking for 3 weeks of time. The warden can't do anything about it and tells Schofield that he is going to be transferred tomorrow. Michael talks with Cooper to ask for advice. The man tells him to write a petition. No matter what the result will be, the court is obligated to look into it, and that will block his transfer for 30 days. Michael writes the petition and then does some laundry with Sucre to block the view in their cell. Schofield walks right through the hole they have opened behind their bathroom to roam the corridors. Michael wants to find out which route they should take after they break out. He has to reach a decision between 3 separate streets. Outside the prison, Nick and Veronica suspect that the tape showing Lincoln performing the hit is made up. Nick takes the tape to a tech guy he knows. The tech guy makes a discovery while examining the sound of the tape. He believes that the sound of the gunshot has been recorded in another room, not in the parking lot depicted in the tape. Veronica asks him if he would testify that in court, but the tech guy would only do so if they brought him the original tape, since this one is just a copy. Later, the two lawyers find out that the room containing the original tape has been flooded, and the evidence is destroyed. Meanwhile, Kellerman asks Pope to destroy Michael's petition. Although Pope destroys it, he considers the possibility of telling his wife the truth. Back inside the prison, Michael fakes a breakout and watches as 2 of the streets he has in mind flood with police cars while the other one remains clean. Although it seems like a big misunderstanding, Michael is causing lots of trouble around, which makes Bellick dislike him. The next morning, Schofield is about to get transferred, but Pope changes his mind and keeps him in prison because he filed a motion. Then, Pope goes to his wife to tell her the truth about his past. The Secret Service agents speak with their boss, who tells them to find a way to kill Lincoln before his death sentence. Over the following days, Schofield keeps working on the escape plan, but he is back on schedule because the guards keep checking the cells. The only solution around this is to cause a lockdown. That would give him all the time in the world. Sucre suggests that to cause a lockdown, they have to make the inmates riot. A good way to do that is to get to the AC system and turn up the heat. literally. The inmates start complaining, but Michael's plan backfires on him. Some of the inmates return to their cells peacefully after a confrontation with the guards, but some others follow T-Bag in a riot. Schofield gets back to work, but his brother is trapped between two groups of inmates, trying to protect a rookie guard who was supposed to take him back to his cell. All the while, an inmate has received an order from the Secret Service to kill Lincoln. Meanwhile, the prisoners in the infirmary hear about the riot, and they start their own little riot, forcing Sarah to try to defend herself in her small office. At the same time, Lincoln is outnumbered by T-Bag and his followers. Although he is really strong, he is knocked out, and T-Bag grabs the guard. By a total accident, T-Bag finds Schofield's hole in his cell, but the guard sees it as well. T-Bag wants to be a part of the team, but they also have to find a solution about the guard. T-Bag wants to kill him, but Schofield keeps everybody from doing so. Then, Schofield realizes that Sarah is in trouble, so he runs to the infirmary to help her out. Elsewhere, a huge inmate named Turk lures Lincoln underground, supposedly to take him to Michael. Turk lures Lincoln underground and surprises him with an attack. Turk tries to choke him with a thin cord. Both of them are heavy and full of muscles, moving like tanks. Lincoln bangs Turk on a wall and manages to get free. In Schofield's cell, T-Bag bullies the guard. Meanwhile, Veronica and Nick have discovered that the phone call for Lincoln the night of the murder was made from Washington, while the murder took place in Chicago. This leads them to travel to Washington looking for answers. Governor Tancredi storms to the prison yard, asking Pope to take action. As it is revealed, Sarah is his daughter. Things get crazier in the infirmary, but Schofield arrives right on time to pull Sarah out of there. Sarah is scared, but Michael assures her that these corridors lead outside. He is not going to hurt her, but rather take her to safety. Turk lurks in the shadows and attacks Lincoln again. Burroughs tries to learn more information as Turk attacks him with a metal pipe. Lincoln pushes Turk to his death while asking him who sent him. Turk doesn't give out any information before he dies. In the meantime, Sucre and Abruzzi keep digging a dangerous wall. They have to follow Michael's instructions perfectly to avoid hitting a pipe, which can cause an explosion. A group of prisoners tries to follow Michael and Sarah, but the former protects her when they are attacked. Another prisoner tries to help his mate, but Sarah breaks his knee with a precise kick. This buys herself and Michael some time to run away. Soon, Michael takes Sarah to safety as a few sharpshooters open fire toward the inmates following her. Michael drops to the floor and drags himself away from the bullets. In Washington, Nick and Veronica find the phone booth that was used to make the phone call on the night of the murder. The phone in the booth rings, and a voice tells them that they are as good as dead. Finally, the police forces are about to enter the prison to reclaim control of it. Michael instructs everyone to let the guard go, but T-Bag doesn't think that's a good idea and kills him before the police squad gets inside. Right outside the prison, Sarah realizes that Schofield knows too much about the prison's layout, which is not normal. Veronica and Nick return to her apartment with a bunch of files. A neighbor helps them carry the packages, but he dies in an explosion as soon as he opens Veronica's apartment door. Schofield's plan requires him to dig a hole into the guards' room, but nobody is allowed there except for Cooper, who is trusted by the guards. Michael approaches him, trying to recruit him, but Cooper insists he is not the man Schofield thinks he is. If he is relying on his supposedly $1.5 million, he is making a mistake. Outside, Nick tells Veronica that they should not contact anyone because if the people who are after them think they are dead, they can use that liberty to continue their research uninterrupted. Schofield finds Cooper's cat, which was lost during the riot, but the latter still refuses to do him a favor and start a fire in the guards' room. Elsewhere, the Secret Service agents create yet another plot, killing LJ's mother and stepfather. Then they casually frame the boy for it. Later, Bellick asks Cooper who killed the guard, but the inmate doesn't want to become a snitch because that would cause issues for him. Bellick kills his cat to punish, and this leads Cooper to help Schofield by starting a fire in the guards' room. This is exactly what Schofield needs, because Abruzzi's crew will be invited to fix the damages. Meanwhile, T-Bag frames one of his friends for the guard's death to get Bellick off their backs. Then, he keeps threatening the group that he will expose their plan, so they are forced to accept him as a part of their team. The crew starts digging in the guard's room when they are taken there to renovate it. By the end of this episode, it is also revealed that the Secret Service agents are working for Madam Vice President herself. Over the next couple of days, the young man who is kept by T-Bag as a plaything asks Michael for help. Schofield does not want to get involved. The crew keeps digging in the guard's room. Little by little, they have to get rid of the debris produced on the ground. They put it in their pockets and empty it in the yard. One day, Schofield feels bad when he sees the young man who asked him for help committing the unthinkable. Bellick approaches Abruzzi to tell him that he has not received his monthly payment. He threatens that if he does not get paid, Abruzzi will lose all of his privileges. Abruzzi communicates with the Italian mafia on the outside, but it seems to him like they are trying to cut him off because he is not giving them Fibonacci's location. Later, the Italian mafia puts a new guy in charge, Lorelli. Abruzzi has a hard time accepting that and attacks his former subordinate, but the rest of the group holds him back because there is a new hierarchy now. Outside the prison, Nick with Veronica speak to Stedman's wife, the vice president's brother. The woman tells them that Stedman was going to be prosecuted for a potential scam, so many of his associates were going to lose money. To make sure that they would not, any of them could have killed him. Teabag harasses a new inmate named David, but the young man tells him that he doesn't want anything to do with him. Teabag won't get off David's back, and Michael sees this. He believes that this time he has to do something about it. In the meantime, LJ communicates with Veronica, who suspects that Kellerman is tracking his phone. Following her instructions, LJ loses the agents and finds Veronica along with Nick. The next time the crew gets together, Michael hits Teabag's knee and clarifies that he is the one who sets the rules, ordering him to let David alone. Then, the crew stumbles on some bad news since Bellick has not received his payment from Abruzzi, and he is not going to give John more time. Abruzzi's crew is removed from the guards room, and Lorelli's crew is assigned to do the job. The crew has to get back into that room, so Abruzzi asks Schofield to give Fibonacci to his boss Falzone. If they don't, the other crew will discover the hole. Schofield thinks about it because Fibonacci is just a guy who happened to be in the wrong time and place. He was working for the mafia, but he had no idea until he saw John killing 2 men. Meanwhile, C-Note suspects that something is off with Schofield and asks Lorelli to work with his crew. Since Lorelli does not need anyone, C-Note offers to pay him $100 per month. Schofield asks Abruzzi to call Falzone and invite him for a meeting in the prison. Falzone agrees, but John knows he is a dead man if Schofield messes this up. C-Note starts working with the crew and discovers the hole in the floor. Elsewhere, a man named Quinn has been sent by the vice president to take matters into his own hands. Quinn asks the agents to step aside as he goes after the lawyers and LJ. Back in the prison, Falzone comes to meet John and Schofield. Schofield outlines how he found Fibonacci, and then Falzone asks to get his address. Schofield asks for some money in exchange, but Abruzzi shows him a picture of Veronica, threatening to kill her if Michael does not give them the address. Schofield has to protect Veronica, so he gives Falzone Fibonacci's address. Falzone reinstates Abruzzi as the top dog of the mafia inside this prison, and the latter asks him to fix the issue with Bellick's money. Falzone gathers a team to go after Fibonacci, but Michael has sent him right into a trap. Abruzzi confronts Schofield about it, but it is revealed that the two of them have been working together on this one. Meanwhile, Quinn kills Veronica's ex-boyfriend and uses his computer to send her an encrypted message. Veronica replies to it, and that's all Quinn needs to track her location. Abruzzi's crew returns to the guards room to keep working on the hole. Schofield announces that they will be out of here by Friday before C-Note crashes the party. He has discovered the hole and wants to be part of the team. Schofield has no other choice but to get him on board. The next day, Schofield has a visit from his wife Nika, who brings him a credit card. During the night, Schofield uses the card to open a few doors to get to the room where his belongings are kept. He opens the box with his stuff to look for his watch, but he realizes it has been stolen. Near the woods, Quinn pretends he has been injured to convince Veronica and the rest to let him in. Once he is inside with them, he shoots Nick and ties the others up. He uses Nick as leverage because he is bleeding out. He wants to know what clues they have in their possession. In the morning, Schofield finds the guard who stole the watch from him. This watch is a part of Michael's plan, which means that he has to take it back. To do that, Michael asks David for help because stealing stuff is his trade. In exchange, he will think about putting him on the working crew. David gets to work and fakes a seizure to be able to approach the guard. When Michael sees him in the infirmary, the guard is missing the watch from his wrist. Pope calls Cooper to tell him that his daughter is sick, but the state is refusing to allow him to go see her. Cooper goes to Schofield to give him the watch and tells him that he wants to escape with the rest of the group. He also offers Schofield the money he has hidden from the robbery he performed so many years ago. Schofield uses the watch and a cell phone to create a recording device. He plants it near the infirmary area because he needs to figure out the shift switches of the guards. At the same time, Veronica and LJ escape. On top of that, they manage to trap Quinn into a well. That same night, Bellick finds Nika and pressures her to tell him more information about Schofield. Nika tries to avoid his questions, but eventually reveals that she brought Michael a credit card. While everything else is happening, Schofield gradually grows closer to Sarah. They enjoy the short meetings they have. Outside the prison, Quinn calls Kellerman for help, but the latter just makes sure that Quinn is never going to escape. Schofield takes the recorder back and makes his calculations, estimating that they have 18 minutes in total to escape. When he meets with Lincoln, he tells him that there is not enough time for all of them to escape. One of them has to be left behind. C-Note overhears Schofield speaking with Lincoln about the extra member of the crew. When he lets the others know that one of them should be left behind, everybody starts thinking about T-Bag. However, T-Bag smells the conspiracy and announces that he has told his cousin about their escape. If he does not hear from him 5 minutes before the escape and 20 minutes after, he will call the guards to tell them everything. The Mafia finds the cousin and Abruzzi sends a man to abduct him. The plan is to keep him alive until they escape and then release him, but things go sideways. Abruzzi's guy kills T-Bag's cousin along with his son when he pulls a gun. The murder of the kid makes Abruzzi feel guilty. Some kind of mold starts forming in his cell, which makes Abruzzi question his eyes, considering that he is seeing the image of Jesus. When he talks to the priest of the prison, he is convinced that God appears to people in moments when they need forgiveness the most. In the meantime, Bellick learns about the watch from guard Geary. He takes David aside for a talk until he convinces him to spy on Schofield and report to him what Michael is doing. Hale has started regretting everything he has done and calls Veronica to ask her for a meeting because he wants to give her information that can prove Lincoln's innocence. Abruzzi corners T-Bag to force him to back out of the escape, but the latter spits a razor out of his mouth and attacks Abruzzi with it. Schofield navigates the corridors while the crew completes the hole in the guards' room. Geary comes to check on them and Lincoln is forced to attack him in order to stall him. When Michael emerges from the hole, he declares that they are leaving tonight. Despite their progress, getting Lincoln is going to be a problem. Abruzzi is transferred to a hospital by helicopter so he can receive better medical care. Lincoln is beaten up by the guards and taken back to solitary confinement. Michael asks to see his brother, but that's a request the warden can't grant. He tells Schofield that he can only see his brother in his execution, which is going to take place in 36 hours. Schofield tells the crew that the escape is off until they get Lincoln, but the rest of the members want to escape tonight with or without Lincoln and Schofield. Michael doesn't give up easily. He uses a razor blade to extract a pill he has been hiding inside his bicep. Then, he speaks to the priest and asks him to deliver a cross to Lincoln since it will mean a lot coming from him. The priest delivers the cross, and Lincoln finds the pill along with a message in it. The message says, "Eat 810." When they get to the guards' room, Schofield causes a minor flood to trick Bellick into forcing them to stay in the room to clean the mess. Veronica visits Lincoln to tell him that Nick is working on some new findings they have. Most probably they are going to achieve a postponement of the execution. When the time comes, Lincoln eats the pill and starts shaking uncontrollably. As a consequence, he is taken to the infirmary. As soon as the time hits 9 o'clock, the team gets moving. Meanwhile, Veronica meets with Hale, who tells her that nobody killed Stedman since he is still alive. Kellerman interrupts them and kills Hale before he can give Veronica a file with the list of the names involved in Lincoln's conspiracy. Back inside the prison, Michael takes the group of escapees under the infirmary so they can break out and take Lincoln along on the way. Unfortunately, the maintenance has replaced a tube that Schofield had opened a hole to, and the plan can't be carried out. T-Bag is angry at Michael and pulls a knife to attack him, but a guard walks by and they have to stop. When they get the chance, they leave the room to return to their cells as if nothing happened. Schofield asks Sarah to talk to her father, the governor, about Lincoln, but she is not going to do it because her father never listens to her. At the same time, Nick and Veronica are fighting to get a court appeal because, as she claims, she has a secret informant who told her that Stedman is not dead. If that's the case, Stedman's body should not be really buried in his coffin. By talking to Cooper, Schofield hears the story of an older inmate who was sentenced to death. The chair didn't work, so he was forced to go through the mental and emotional process of it again 3 weeks later when the chair got fixed. Schofield considers that he can save Lincoln by breaking the chair. He goes into the corridors once more and is lucky enough to see a mouse. He grabs the mouse and then releases it to the room with the chair, hoping that the mouse will cause a discontinuation of the electricity current somehow. The problem is, David has heard Michael talking about the chair and he spits it to Bellick. The guard checks on the chair, but it's not working. While trying to figure out what's wrong, he finds out that a mouse has been roasted inside the electricity board. All they have to do to get the chair working again is to change a fuse. In the meantime, Veronica and Nick get a hearing, but they have no tangible proof to present. Veronica talks about Kellerman and Hale, but the vice president's lawyer hands everybody a note from the Secret Service stating that the service does not have any agents with those names. Lincoln's lawyers lose the appeal. Lincoln is taken to the final visitation space with Michael, while Sarah visits the lawyers and then her father to present him with some clues. Nonetheless, this is not enough. When Lincoln is taken near the chair, the governor calls Pope to tell him that he is not granting Lincoln a favor, With that, everything seems lost for Lincoln. Moments before Lincoln is executed, he spots a man in the crowd and tries to tell Michael about him. Pope receives a phone call which forces him to stop the execution. Then he explains to everyone that Judge Kessler called him to ask him to stop. Veronica leaves to go meet the judge, while Lincoln tells Michael that he saw their father within the crowd. Judge Kessler informs Veronica that he received a document showing a discrepancy in the coroner's reports. He will delay Lincoln's execution for 2 weeks. He has also ordered Stedman's body to be dug out so a new coroner can run new tests on it. Schofield starts working on finding a new path to their freedom. He concludes that they have to pass through the psychiatric ward. Schofield needs to spend some time exploring the new path so he can familiarize himself with it. Sucre helps him out by getting him a guard's uniform from his cousin who works in the laundry. Cooper spends some time speaking with C-Note, revealing a new secret. C-Note has kept his family in the dark, not letting them know that he is imprisoned. He fixes things so his family receives postal cards from him to assume that he is a soldier in Iraq. Schofield uses the guard uniform to browse around in the psychiatric ward, finding what he's been looking for. In the meantime, the coroner examines Stedman's supposed body and concludes that this is really Stedman. On his way back, Schofield has to hide from a guard and burns his body on a hot tube. Michael reaches his cell but passes out. He wakes up in the infirmary the next morning while Bellick assumes that Sucre burnt Schofield. Meanwhile, Kellerman starts working with some agents from an organization called The Company, where Vice President Reynolds also belongs. By reviewing footage from the cameras, they realize that Lincoln's father was the one who slipped the envelope with the reports under Judge Kessler's door. Back in Schofield's cell, he checks on his burn mark only to find out that a part of the blueprint on his back is gone. The story takes us 3 years in the past to show us how the brothers used to live. Michael was doing good in his life. After he graduated, he got a good job and managed to buy a house. On the other hand, Lincoln was living the life of a thug. Schofield was even looking down on his brother, being tired of playing the older brother to his older brother. One day, Lincoln returned to his house only to find Crabbe and another man waiting for him. Lincoln owed Crabbe $90,000, but his debt was paid by this other man. However, he didn't do this out of his good heart. He asked Lincoln to go kill Stedman. Lincoln was confused and called Schofield for guidance, but Michael did not reply. Lincoln arrived at the scene with a pistol in his hands, but the person in the car was already dead. Lincoln got arrested and Schofield blamed him for his actions. Their father disappeared and their mother died, but Michael handled things in a better way. Their mother also left them with some money from her life insurance. Schofield used the money well, while Lincoln did not. However, Veronica reveals to Michael that their mother left them no money because she did not have life insurance. Lincoln borrowed the money to give it to Schofield, making it look like it did not come from him. These developments lead Michael to decide to go to prison to save his brother. As for the other characters, Sarah was a drug addict. She met Bellick in a support group, and he invited her to work in the prison. Sucre was arrested during a robbery because he needed money to buy a ring for his fiancée. C-Note was serving in the military, but was dishonorably discharged when he reported some illegal torture. Teabag was in love with a woman who had 2 children, but the woman reported him to the authorities when she realized that he was a fugitive. Finally, Reynolds has a talk with a man who has his back turned, but he is revealed to be Stedman. Back in the present day, the crew now has a new problem to deal with since Bellick puts David on the team. He wants David near Schofield as much as possible so he can undermine his plans. Outside the prison, Veronica's group goes back to the well to find Quinn's dead body. They lower LJ down to steal his phone, but the boy also sees 2 names carved on the wall, Kellerman and Kravecki. Meanwhile, Sarah has recovered a piece of fabric from a guard's uniform from when she was treating Michael's burn. She hands it to Pope, and the warden asks Schofield about it. Since Schofield can't provide an answer, Pope throws him in solitary. Schofield tries to remember the part of his tattoo that's missing, but he can't. This makes him mad, and he starts punching the wall. In the meantime, Bellick will bring a professional crew to work in the guards' room, so the group of inmates has to find a solution to cover the hole in the floor. Since only Sucre's cell has access to the corridors, he is the one who is going to do it during the night. Unfortunately, Sucre has to run through the yard, and he gets caught. He has taken some precautions, though, and comes up with a story, saying that he waited for something to be dropped for him over the wall. Supposedly, it's just some underwear that belongs to his girlfriend. Bellick buys it, but still takes Sucre to solitary. While Sarah is called by a guard to check on Schofield, David tells Bellick that the crew is up to something. He is not certain what the fuss is about, but but it has something to do with the floor. Bellick proceeds to check it out, but Sucre has done his job well. The cement has dried and the floor looks good. Outside the prison, LJ finds out that Kellerman's real name is Owen Krivecki. He invades his house intending to kill him, but the police come to the scene and arrest him. Back inside the prison, Michael is taken to the psychiatric yard since he has convinced everyone that he is experiencing a mental episode. However, Michael is well. He approaches Potoshik to tell him that he was right about his tattoos. In fact, Michael wants him to remember his tattoos and draw them for him. Schofield realizes that the medicine makes Potoshik forget. In the meantime, Guard Geary tries to sell Schofield's cell to the highest bidder since it is in a good spot. Teabag informs the crew about it, and C-Note tells Geary that he will buy the room for $500. Kellerman is dismissed by the Secret Service and the company because he has been compromised. C-Note asks his boys inside the prison to get him the money, but instead, he receives a beating. The blacks don't like the fact that C-Note is hanging out with Teabag and the rest of the whites. Potoshik starts remembering Schofield gradually after he is convinced to stop taking his medication. Michael sees Sanchez and asks him to deliver a message to his cousin Sucre, telling him that he is trying to fill in the blanks. Soon, Potoshik remembers too much and jumps on Schofield because he screwed him back in their cell. Schofield has to outline the plan for him before Potoshik destroys the drawing he has made with the missing tattoo. Schofield sets up Potoshik again and asks to meet Sarah so he can get out of there. Teabag and C-Note participate in a game of poker to make some money to buy the cell, but Geary just takes their money without giving them the cell. Sanchez now knows too much, and Sucre with Lincoln decide to tell him about the plan. Schofield comes up with a double solution to their problems. He asks to speak to Pope and tells him that Geary extorted him for money. Since he could not make the payment, Geary burnt him. Pope checks on Geary's locker and finds a lot of money in it. Geary is fired and leaves the prison. At the same time, Lincoln is transferred outside the prison because he has been allowed to visit his son for an hour. While the van is en route, a large truck hits it and flips it over. Lincoln wakes up in a field with Kellerman standing on top of him. Kellerman tries to strangle him, but a man appears and knocks the agent out. Schofield reunites with his team to announce to them that he knows how they are going to escape. However, he needs the key to the infirmary, which is only possessed by the medical staff. At the same time, Abruzzi returns to the prison having survived Teabag's attack. Michael kisses Sarah in the infirmary, but he feels bad to steal the keys from her, so he just asks her to wait for him. Even though Sarah likes him, she can't be in a relationship with him because he is an inmate. Schofield asks David for help, but the young man will only assist him if Michael can get rid of his cellmate Avocado, who keeps harassing David. The mysterious man who saved Lincoln is revealed to be his father, Aldo. Aldo explains that he used to work for the company, a group of multinationals who call the shot behind the government. They basically control everything. Aldo left them and took some information with him, so they do everything they do to Lincoln in the hope that they will find Aldo. Meanwhile, Abruzzi is a changed man since he believes that Jesus saved him. He shakes hands with Teabag, asking him to leave the past behind. Despite his change of behavior, he still wants to escape with the rest of the group. Mika meets Sarah outside the prison to tell her that Michael is a good man. He married her so that she could get a green card and live in the country peacefully. However, the real reason for this meeting is so she can steal Sarah's keys and then visit Michael to give him the keys. Aldo reveals that the company faked Stedman's death to prevent a scandal, but the police and Kellerman find them. To protect his father and stay alive, Lincoln gives himself in. Michael makes a copy of the infirmary key, but Sarah understands the plot and asks to have the lock changed. Later, Abruzzi calls somebody and asks him to be ready. It is revealed that he is talking to Nick, who is watching over Veronica for Abruzzi. David is in serious trouble with Avocado, so Michael approaches him to give him a chance to get out of there. David reassures him that he can be trusted, but he tells Bellick everything about the escape once Michael lets him know. Bellick runs to the guard's room and discovers the hole on the floor. Cooper attacks Bellick to prevent him from exposing their operation. The old man has some fight left in him and knocks Bellick out even though he is severely injured. Once Cooper tells Michael about this, the latter declares that they are leaving tonight. Schofield gives everyone some tasks while also stressing that they need to cover their scents because the police dogs will be their main enemies after the escape. Then, Michael speaks to Sarah and tells her everything. The group will have to pass through here, so Michael asks Sarah to forget the door unlocked. Sarah leaves without giving him a clear answer. At the same time, Abruzzi calls Nick to tell him that he has to bring Veronica to the designated location tonight. Pope tries to transfer the Taj Mahal replica, but the roof collapses, so he asks for Michael to come in his office. Veronica is getting ready to fly to Montana to investigate some clues, but Nick pulls a gun on her. While everybody is preparing for the escape, a nurse walks out of the infirmary and closes the door behind her. Sarah is not working this evening. Meanwhile, Pope learns that Bellick is nowhere to be found. He starts looking everywhere for him, and even calls his wife, but nobody has seen Bellick since this morning. Then, Pope takes Michael into his office to tell him about the replica, and Schofield presents him with a piece that has been holding the roof. Michael pulls a knife and tells the warden that he is escaping. He threatens the warden that he will be forced to make arrangements so Lincoln can join them. Schofield asks Pope to order his men to transfer Lincoln to the infirmary and leave him there for the night. Pope tries to talk Michael out of this, but Schofield has made his decision. After Pope gives the order, Michael locks him in the office closet. When it's time, the prisoners pass through the hole one by one. Bellick almost frees himself and starts screaming for help, but the inmates reach him just in time to stop him. Meanwhile, the company gives up on Reynolds, who wants to run for president, because she seems to be losing in the polls. Their estimation is that she is not going to go down quietly, so they need to make a move on her ASAP. Sarah returns to the prison and opens the door for Schofield because she believes Lincoln is innocent. Michael sounds the fire alarm at the psychiatric ward so he can cause an evacuation of the ward. Schofield and his group use white uniforms to mingle with those inmates and get inside the psychiatric ward. Elsewhere, Nick changes his mind and lets Veronica go, even though the Mafia has his father. This will later lead to Nick and his father getting killed by the Mafia. The team finds Lincoln, but Pope's secretary also finds the warden, who sounds the alarm immediately. On top of that, Potoshek has followed the group and wants to escape with them. Since he is threatening to notify the guards, the group will take him. The team uses a rope to get past the wall. Old Man Cooper succumbs to his serious wounds, but still tells Michael where he has hidden the money. Some of the other inmates also hear him revealing the location. Michael and Sanchez are the last ones to use the rope, but the weight is too much for the rope to hold. Sanchez falls due to his excessive weight, but Michael makes it. Bellick is freed, and Pope gathers his men to tell them that they should bring the convicts back in no matter what. He gives them the freedom to shoot if they have to. The escapees find a van placed there by Abruzzi's men. They play a little trick and leave Potoshek behind. Pope finds out that the door in the infirmary has not been breached, which can only mean that somebody left it open for the inmates. Inside the van, Abruzzi is about to kill Teabag, but the latter handcuffs himself to Schofield and swallows the key. Soon, the crew is forced to ditch the van and run on foot. Schofield forces David to leave the team since he betrayed their plan to Bellick. In the meantime, Reynolds refuses to go down without a fight, and she prepares a plot to kill the President of the United States. The team of escapees hides in a warehouse for a moment, but they have to do something about Teabag because he is slowing them down. After they jump on him, Sucre tries to cut the handcuffs, but it doesn't work. Abruzzi has had enough, so he grabs an axe and chops Teabag's hand off. The group flees while Teabag is left on the ground. Meanwhile, the president dies, and Reynolds swears as the new president. The company wants to renegotiate with her, but she has more power now. Pope sends his men to find Sarah, but she is in no condition to speak since she is overdosed. Veronica lands in Montana and enters a mansion. As she expected, she finds Stedman alive. The fugitives make a run for the airstrip, where Abruzzi's men are waiting with the plane. However, the police also arrive. The pilot of the plane knows that they are going to get caught, so he gets the engines running. The fugitives reach the airstrip, but they only see the plane leaving. While the police cars are arriving, everybody wonders what they should do not. There is only one thing they can do: run. At the start of the new season, FBI agent Alexander Mahone is tasked with apprehending the Fox River 8 escapees. The authorities are also pursuing the escapees. The group of escapees includes our main character, Michael Schofield, and his brother, Lincoln Burrows. Also, there are Fernando Sucre, Benjamin Franklin, and Abruzzi. Also, Theodore Bagwell, aka Teabag, was with them. But as he is a very bad person, the team cuts off his hand and leaves him alone. Then they steal a vehicle, and Michael directs them to a warehouse in Oswego. Meanwhile, the authorities get a lead on the escapees, but when they reach the location, they realize that they have raided the wrong location. On the other hand, Alexander Mahone searches Michael Schofield's apartment and uncovers evidence that shows Michael has been planning his escape for months. Acting on this discovery, Mahone orders a search of the adjacent river. He thinks that Michael must have something disposed of in that river, which can be potential evidence. After that, Mahone begins to unravel the truth behind Michael's intricate tattoo design. Elsewhere, Teabag still carries his cut hand in a box full of ice. He succeeds in finding a veterinary doctor and forces him to reconnect his severed hand. After that, he kills the doctor and leaves in the doctor's car in pursuit of other escapees, as he also knows what Michael is going after. The scene shifts to the wife of Lincoln, Veronica Donovan. She is inside the mansion with the former president. Soon she realizes that she cannot leave the mansion where she is being held, and that's why she calls the police for help. However, after some time, instead of the police, some suited men arrive there and brutally murder her. Then we see Sarah Tancredi, who regains consciousness. In the coming days, she receives a secret message from Michael. After decrypting the message, Sarah learns a little about Michael's next move, back to the escapees group. At the warehouse, they retrieve some shovels and begin digging in the ground. There, they unearth a stash Michael buried earlier before going to prison. It contains clothes and other items crucial to their planned disappearance. At the same time, Alexander Mahone is battling an addiction to a certain narcotic. Still, he continues to investigate Michael's plans. Driven by obsession, he vows to fully understand Michael's scheme and capture him once and for all. According to a statement by previously fired C.O. Geary, the authorities suspended Warden Pope for providing Michael Scofield with special privileges as he was constructing the Taj Mahal for Pope's wife. The authorities also terminated Bellick for selling some critical information, including some rights, to Abruzzi, who was also one of the escapees. After losing his job, Bellick comes home and learns that the government has placed a high bounty on the capture of each member of the Fox River 8 escapees. So now he plans to capture the escapees and get the bounty amount. On the other hand, the group decides to split up and go on their separate paths, but the brothers are still together. Lincoln Burrows convinces Michael Scofield to help rescue LJ, who is the son of Lincoln and currently under investigation by the authorities. He is also being falsely convicted for a crime which he has not done. The brothers use a vehicle that Michael had stashed in a garage. On their way, they stop to buy some supplies from a store, but there they are intercepted by the police. So they are forced to abandon the car and flee to save their lives. But the car was very important in their plan to disappear from the eyes of the authorities. After that, Lincoln calls LJ and gives him some instructions, as Lincoln is coming to save him. Unfortunately, Alexander Mahone is present there, and he understands something is wrong. So when Lincoln shows up from the roof of the elevator to save his son, Mahone disrupts the plan, and Lincoln has to retreat without his son. The brothers manage to escape, though Lincoln is shot in the process. Soon after, LJ is sent to Arizona for imprisonment. Meanwhile, T-Bag sets off for Utah, where he knows that Westmoreland's money is hidden. Also an escapee, Tweener continues his petty thefts and agrees to accompany a girl who invites him to join her in Utah. Everyone is behind the money of Westmoreland. One morning, Bellick confronts Geary at a store, and after a fight, they agree to work together to collect the bounties on the escapees. First, they pressure an unsuccessful escapee, Seth Sanchez, into providing information, and then they start to chase Michael's girlfriend. In the meantime, the brothers arrive at a safe house where Lincoln receives medical treatment as the police shoot him. Then, Michael returns to retrieve their car, only to find that it is not present there. After some time of searching, he finds out the car is in a junkyard, but he discovers that their bag is missing from the car. Leaving everything behind them, the brothers continue their journey out of the city on a route indicated by Michael's tattoo. To mislead the authorities, they destroy the car, leaving 2 chunks of flesh behind. This ploy causes the police to believe that they are dead. However, Alexander Mahone remains suspicious and continues his relentless pursuit. He gives the names of some other convicts in the place of Michael and Lincoln, making the police continue searching the brothers. The brothers join the girlfriend of Michael, Volek, who is already being tracked by Bellick and Geary. Meanwhile, Sucre learns from a friend that his girlfriend, Maricruz Delgado, is planning to marry Hector in Las Vegas. Hearing this, Sucre becomes desperate. He borrows a friend's motorcycle and begins riding toward Vegas. Meanwhile, Sarah Tancredi is detained for her narcotics addiction. Soon, she enters a rehabilitation program on her father's recommendation. There, she meets a man named Kellerman Paul, who is actually using a false identity. He poses as a fellow recovering addict and begins gaining Sarah's trust. In reality, he is a Secret Service agent and working for the company now. In the meantime, Bellick and Geary ambush and capture Michael Scofield, Volek, and Lincoln Burrows. Now, they intend to claim Westmoreland's money rather than the bounty on the escapees. That's why they force Michael to drive them towards the location of the money. During the drive, Lincoln discreetly causes a tire to puncture. Geary takes the tire back to town for repairs, leaving Bellick to guard the trio. While performing a distraction, Volek steals Bellick's dagger during a staged lap dance and uses it to free herself and the brothers. Together, they lock Bellick in a cell and later capture Geary as well. Bellick, desperate to save himself, reveals Sarah's fragile condition. Here Volek, seeing an opportunity, decides to turn the brothers in for the bounty instead of pursuing Westmoreland's money. However, her plan fails because there's no bullet in the gun and the brothers abandon her on the road. Meanwhile, Tweener grows closer to the girl he is traveling with towards Utah. He is still hiding his true identity from her. At the same time, Abruzzi learns the location of Fibonacci, the man who betrayed him, That's why he rushes to kill him. However, it turns out to be a trap orchestrated by Alexander Mahone. When confronted, Abruzzi refuses to surrender and is fatally shot after pulling out a revolver. Consequently, Mahone faces backlash for his handling of the situation in such a bad way. But he is also a man working for the company. That's why he gets out of any inquiry easily. Back at rehab, Paul and Sarah begin forming a bond. They start meeting at the home of Sarah, with Paul continuing to manipulate her. Also, the FBI discovers that both brothers are still alive. Meanwhile, Tweener's companion learns his true identity, but surprisingly allows him to steal her car and flee. Obviously, she is also in love with him, but can't risk her own life for an escapee. That's why she lets him run from the motel room where they were staying. The brothers arrive in Utah, but no one there seems to know anything about the land they are searching for. Actually, the money was hidden there years ago, and now, due to the expansion of the city, the landmarks have changed, and no one knows the specific location where the money is hidden. So, they head to City Hall to retrieve the blueprints of the city, only to find that the specific page they need has already been removed. There, they spot T-Bag, so they are convinced that T-Bag must have got the blueprint already. Then they track down T-Bag, who admits that he was too late to reach the City Hall, and that Tweener now has the blueprint. Tweener, meanwhile, is at a hardware store acquiring some digging equipment. A suspicious salesperson notices him, but before the situation escalates, the brothers arrive and confront Tweener. However, he confesses that Blueprint is actually in possession of T-Bag, and he mislead the brothers so that he can have some time to memorize the contents of the blueprint and destroys it by eating it. Now the brothers have no choice but to rely on him for the maps. Elsewhere, Sucre rushes to the church where Maricruz Delgado is getting married. He confronts Hector and asks him to leave his girlfriend alone. But Hector has already called in the police, so Sucre punches him and flees the scene to avoid being arrested. Now leaving everything behind, Sucre also heads for the location of Westmoreland's money. On the road, he meets Franklin, and they continue their next journey together. Alexander Mahone discovers the significance of the money and realizes that all the escapees are converging on Utah. At the same time, Kim, a high-ranking operative for the company, informs Kellerman that he cannot communicate directly with President Reynolds anymore and must report through Kim instead from now on. Back in Rehabilitation Center, Sarah begins to believe that Lincoln Burrows might be innocent after reevaluating the evidence. For once, she tries to forget Michael, but she still loves her and can't stop herself from thinking about him. On the other hand, Michael, Lincoln, and T-Bag arrive at the land, only to find that a residential community has been built on the property where money is buried. After some investigation, Michael determines that the money is buried beneath the foundation of a house owned by a middle-aged woman. The group devises a plan to go into the house of that lady and search for the money. Tweener arrives with the digging equipment, and Michael poses in front of the lady as a contractor from an energy company. He convinces the woman that her power supply needs urgent repairs, which they intentionally disrupted. Luckily, she allows them inside, and the group begins digging under the house. Soon they are joined by Sucre and Franklin. They have also come there to get their share of the money. After some time, Tweener is sent to refuel their vehicle, as Michael doesn't want any difficulty after retrieving the money. But at the fuel station, Tweener is recognized by the authorities. He flees the scene, but is eventually captured by Alexander Mahone. So Mahone takes him to the investigation room of a nearby police station and interrogates him about the whereabouts of the others. Meanwhile, the psychotic Haywire, who was also one of the escapees, wanders the streets aimlessly. He enters an abandoned residence where he becomes captivated by a painting of a country house and decides to take it. In the meantime, Sarah's father, who is now a governor and is going to become the vice president soon, he comes to the house of Sarah to meet her, and there he meets Paul, who is already present there. Paul introduces himself as a friend. At the house where the group is digging, the middle-aged homeowner suddenly expresses her disapproval of T-Bag and insists that the group leave her house immediately. During their excavation, they notice a police officer arriving at the house. The officer is revealed to be the woman's daughter, so the group locks both women in a room and continues digging, as now they are very close to their goal. After some time, Lincoln Burrows decides to leave the group after discovering that LJ has been exonerated and will soon be released. However, he doesn't know that this is a trap set by Alex Mahone to lure and capture him. After hours of hard work, the squad eventually uncovers the money. However, Sucre draws a pistol on the group, demanding the entire bag. He takes the whole bag for himself and leaves it alone. Meanwhile, Alexander Mahone appears to strike a deal with Tweener. He promises leniency for Tweener in exchange for leading him to the other escapees. Tweener initially agrees, but he also plays a game with the agent. He visits his girlfriend instead of the escapees and instructs her to wait for him. However, soon, Mahone understands that this is not what was promised, so he takes Tweener away. During their journey back to the police station, Mahone decides to transport Tweener alone. Suddenly, he stops the car on a deserted road and coldly murders the young man. Elsewhere, Haywire begins building a makeshift boat inspired by the painting of the country house. Though he meets some teenagers, but the teenagers gets offended by the cryptic behavior of Haywire and leave him. The following day, Sarah arrives at her father's house only to find him dead in an apparent self-harm act. She is shocked by seeing this and calls the police. There, she retrieves a key that her father had hidden in his last days. In the meantime, Paul blames Kim for the way he handled the governor's death and warns that a similar fate awaits Sarah, too. Back at the excavation site, Sucre takes the entire bag of money and flees without distributing it. However, it is revealed that this was part of Michael Scofield's plan to manipulate the group and gain a larger share. Unfortunately, they soon discover that the bag Sucre took is the wrong one. T-Bag is revealed to have the real bag of money. He leaves the group and begins planning to find Susan Hollander, the woman who alerted the authorities and led to his imprisonment. Apparently, he is still in love with that lady. While heading back towards the city through a forest, Sucre becomes trapped under a wooden log in a river. Michael Scofield tries his best to free him, but fails. The police are also pursuing them, and they can reach their location at any time. Sucre asks Michael to leave him and save his own life. However, Michael still stays there, risking his life for his friend Sucre. Luckily, the dam opens and the water level starts rising. Michael also suggests a plan. He jerks to the wooden log with his motorbike and rescues Sucre just in time. Sucre later learns that Maricruz Delgado has called off her wedding and begins searching for Sucre. Meanwhile, the group uses the remaining money to purchase vehicles and split up. Lincoln successfully locates LJ, and the two manage to escape from the company operatives by faking a fight with some street criminal. Meanwhile, Bellick and Geary deduce that T-Bag has the money and they start to figure out where he is heading. Elsewhere, Sarah narrowly avoids an attack from the company operatives who mistakenly target someone else using a payphone. She reaches out to Bruce Bennett, a colleague of her father, for help, but soon discovers that he betrayed her and is working for the company. At that time, Paul works to decrypt the encrypted texts Sarah received from Michael Scofield. During this time, Michael attempts to retrieve the nitroglycerin vials he had planted before his imprisonment, but he barely escapes after discovering that the FBI is lying in wait for him. He begins to suspect that Mahone is systematically killing every escapee he captures. To learn more about Mahone, Michael contacts his former wife, Pam, while posing as an agent. Michael uncovers that Mahone murdered Oscar Shales, who was a missing serial killer. Also, Mahone buried his body in his yard. After that, Michael confronts Mahone on the phone call and warns him to stay away from him and Lincoln. In exchange, Michael promises not to reveal Mahone's dark secret. However, Mahone refuses the deal, as now he knows exactly where Michael plans to meet Sarah. Meanwhile, Franklin reunites with his friends and together, they stage a daring rescue to free his wife, Case, from FBI custody. He also manages to save his daughter and finally reunites with his family. In the meantime, T-Bag arrives at Susan Hollander's house, only to find that she has put it up for sale and fled with her children. Soon after, Bellick and Geary capture T-Bag and torture him to reveal the location of the money, but T-Bag is very hard to crack. Paul learns that Sarah Tancredi is heading to New Mexico for meeting Michael, so he planned to pursue her. Meanwhile, Lincoln and LJ attempt to evade the police but are eventually apprehended. But their luck works and they get freed by some strangers who apparently are working with the father of Lincoln and Michael. Soon, Sarah reaches her destination and reunites with Michael Scofield, but they are ambushed by Alexander Mahone. Michael drives the car towards an abandoned industrial area. Using quick thinking, he lures Mahone into a trap inside that abandoned factory. While Sarah escapes, Michael has Mahone inside a locked room. Mahone can't shoot at Michael because Michael has leaked propane gas in the factory. Michael asks him to stay away as he is always one step ahead of the authorities and the company for which Mahone is working. At a safe place, Sarah tends to Michael's injuries, reassuring him that his plan to outsmart Mahone worked. She also expresses gratitude for his efforts in ensuring T-Bag faced justice. The scene shifts to Lincoln and LJ, who are now at a safe house with Lincoln's father, Aldo, and his men. There, Lincoln and LJ finally reunited with Aldo Burrows. However, a mole within their group tips off Kim about their location. Elsewhere, Bellick and Geary's torture of T-Bag proves ineffective until T-Bag swallows a key. So, they retrieve the key using laxatives, which leads them to a safety deposit box containing the money. However, greed takes over, and Geary betrays Bellick, attacking him and stealing the bag for himself. On the other hand, Sucre sends a message to Maricruz Delgado, asking her to call him, but she doesn't respond as the police are present there. However, Sucre is determined to meet her, so he sends another message, asking her to meet him in Mexico. Meanwhile, Paul has reached the location where Sarah is present with Michael. There, Sarah leaves a knot for Michael and leaves him. But as soon as she comes out of the safe house, she gets ambushed by Paul. scene shifts to Teabag, who is handcuffed in a room, and Geary has already informed the police about Teabag, so soon the police are reaching there. Teabag decides to cut his hand again in order to escape from the scene when he hears the police siren. Michael, who is now alone as Sarah has left him. He is also lacking the necessary funds for his next move. For a short time, he feels a pang of guilt over what he plans to do. Seeking solace, he goes to a church for confession before deciding to carry out his plan. At the safe house, Aldo Burrows reveals that Governor Tancredi had a tape that could prove Lincoln's innocence. However, they are ambushed by the company's mole. But fortunately, Lincoln kills the mole in self-defense. Seeing this, Aldo orders his accomplice to transport LJ to a safe location. Then we see Kim, who reaches the abandoned factory. Here, Michael has trapped Mahone. So he frees Alexander Mahone from there and directs him to Michael Schofield's location again. Michael arrives at his scheduled meeting with smugglers who promise to transport him across the border in exchange for nitroglycerin. However, when they discover that Michael has brought fake nitroglycerin, they plan to kill him. Just in time, Sucre arrives and saves Michael, badly injuring the smuggler's leader in the process. They both then bind the smugglers to chairs and start asking where the plane is. But the smuggler leader's condition is getting worse by the time he is bleeding, so Michael spares the smugglers. In exchange for this good behavior, Michael gets the location of the airfield from smugglers. As Michael and Sucre prepare to leave, Lincoln and Aldo arrive there as planned. Michael is stunned to recognize Aldo as his father. Here we learn that Aldo had left Michael at a very young age, and after that, the life of Michael was miserable. Elsewhere, Bellick sends a threatening note to Geary, warning him about the situation. He actually wants to threaten his disloyal friend so that he return the stolen money. However, Teabag intercepts the situation and kills Geary in order to get back his money bag. Meanwhile, Paul takes Sarah to a motel room and tortures her for the information that she got from her father, but she refuses to give in. Kim is also on the call with Paul, who wants that information. But when Sarah continuously refuses to open her mouth, Kim gets frustrated and orders to kill her. Paul, though hesitant, still has to follow the orders. So he leaves Sarah in the tub full of water while her hands are bound behind the chair. He has left her to die in the water. Back to Michael Schofield, who confesses to Lincoln that his foster father used to abuse him before Aldo Burrows intervened and saved him by killing the abuser. Aldo says that he was a part of the company, and that's why he had to abandon his family, as there were many threats to their lives. There, he also reveals the existence of the tape that could clear Lincoln's name. He assures Michael that they no longer need to run. However, their happiness is short-lived as Alexander Mahone has reached there. As soon as he sees the whole family together, he starts shooting at them. Luckily, the family succeeds in fleeing from that place, but Aldo gets a bullet in the shootout. He takes his last breaths in the car and asks his sons to search for that tape. Michael and Lincoln are very as they met their father after so many years, and just then, they lost him again for always this time. Then, they bury their father and continue the journey. Now, instead of fleeing abroad, they decide to stay and fight for their rights. Their first goal is to find the tape, so Sucre boards the plane alone, leaving the brothers behind. The scene shifts to Bellick, who continues to lie to authorities about his actions. However, now he is caught when the authorities discover the incriminating message he left for Geary. This message leads to his arrest for murder. At the same time, Franklin's wife, Case, realizes she forgot their daughter's medication. So, while attempting to retrieve it from a pharmacy, she is recognized and arrested. On the other hand, Mahone arrives at the airfield too late to stop Sucre's plane from taking off. However, he finds Michael and Lincoln, who are trying to contact Sarah Tancredi again. So Mahone hits his car into the vehicle of the brothers. As he prepares to kill the brothers, the police arrive and arrest them instead. Mahone demands the police that the brothers be transported alone with him, but his request is denied. Meanwhile, Sarah succeeds in setting herself free from the bathtub full of water. She attacks Paul there and jumps from the window to save her life. Soon, Kim learns about Sarah's escape, so Kim dismisses Paul Kellerman for his repeated failures. Paul manages to convince him to grant him one last chance to prove his worth. He devises a plan to kill the brothers during their transport. However, Kim secretly orders Mahone to eliminate Paul once the brothers are dead. Back at Fox River, Bellick is present to spend his punishment tenure there. He has chosen to serve his time there, hoping to receive special treatment among his former colleagues. Instead, he finds that the new warden refuses to grant him any privileges. To his horror, Bellick is sent to Avocado's cell, which is going to make the prison hell for him. The scene shifts to Teabag, who begins dating a postal worker and convinces her to help him locate Susan Hollander. When she uncovers his true identity, Teabag murders her and surprises Hollander at her home. Soon, he traps her and her children inside. He is back to his serious self. He binds Susan and forces the children to follow his orders. He has also blocked the door with wooden logs. He ensures that Hollander and her children cannot escape. cementing his control over them. Meanwhile, Sarah Tancredi is trying to stay under the radar. She changes her hairstyle to avoid recognition. During the prisoner transfer, Michael Scofield and Lincoln Burrows are left alone in the vehicle when they are passing through an underpass. Also, the keys are left in front of them intentionally. Alex Mahone wants to let the brothers use the keys and escape from there. Everything is planned as the door of the nearby escape route is opened, and Alex Mahone is making the police busy somewhere else. So the brothers think about the escape for a bit and then execute their escape plan. Alex Mahone is chasing them, and also, on the other end of the underpass, Paul is waiting with a sniper gun to kill them. So, on both sides, the brothers are in trouble. Soon, they are recaptured by Paul Kellerman and Alexander Mahone. Things take a sharp turn here because Kellerman unexpectedly shoots Mahone and offers to help the brothers. He also claims that he has information about Terrence Steadman's location. However, Lincoln is skeptical about Paul as he was the person who framed Lincoln on the false murder charges. So Lincoln tries to kill him, but Paul persuades them by revealing Steadman's whereabouts, who is still alive and living under captivity in a mansion. After that, the trio boards a plane to Montana to confront Steadman. On the other hand, we learn that Mahone is still alive. When he recovers his consciousness, he informs Kim of the situation. This prompts Kim to order Steadman's relocation. However, Michael, Lincoln, and Paul arrive just in time to abduct Steadman from the suited men. Back to Mahone, who is now tired of working for the company, so he tries to quit. However, soon, his child becomes a target of an accident caused by the company. So Mahone is forced to continue working for the company under any conditions. At Fox River, Bellick faces harassment from Banks and other inmates. After a scuffle, Bellick uses the element of surprise to fight back. Later that night, the guards secretly aligned with Banks and opened Bellick's cell, leaving him vulnerable to retaliation. Meanwhile, Paul Kellerman reveals that Terrence Steadman's identity has been completely altered. His sister Caroline, who is now the president, has made him unrecognizable. Despite this, Michael Scofield contacts the press to expose the truth, as his brother's freedom is linked with this truth. However, overwhelmed by guilt and panic, Steadman grabs a pistol and kills himself. Now, the brothers can't prove their innocence. And also, the police have surrounded the hotel where the group is staying. The police force them to come out of the house. Michael quickly devises a plan and comes out under the custody of Paul. After coming out, they take a cameraman hostage and escape from that scene. At Fox River, Bellick is seen badly beaten in the morning. He is also warned to keep his mouth shut, otherwise the consequences could be bad. Meanwhile, Michael and Lincoln record their statements in the camera and leaves the cameraman. Soon, the captured cameraman returns to his network headquarters with the tape, which is aired on the television. In the video, Lincoln Burrows reiterates his innocence, saying that he has been framed in the murder. Then Michael explains the company's operations and the truth about Oscar Shales. Michael also says that Alex Mahone is working for the company. Michael also apologizes to Sarah and announces that Sarah was never involved in anything with him. The broadcast includes coded messages, most of which Alexander Mahone deduces as useless, except for one meant for Sarah Tancredi. Mahone is desperate to uncover the plan of Michael, so he enlists Bellick to decode the message in exchange for a transfer to administrative isolation. Elsewhere, Fernando Sucre reaches to another country, and there he shares dinner with an elderly man who, after hearing his story, lends him a car to reach Maricruz Delgado. On the other hand, Sarah contacts the hospital about which Michael has left a secret message for her. There, Michael, Lincoln, and Paul are waiting for her. Soon, Sarah reunites with the trio, but reveals to Michael the horrors Paul inflicted on her in the past. Tensions rise, but Paul redeems himself slightly by revealing that Sarah's key belongs to a secretive club in Chicago, offering it as the next step in their journey. That's why the group boards a train bound for Chicago. Haunted by her trauma, Sarah contemplates assassinating Paul during the journey on the train, but Michael and Lincoln stops her from doing this. We learn that Paul is now in direct contact with President Caroline, who asks to bring the brothers to Chicago. Paul tells her that they are on the train towards Chicago at this time. The police, acting on a tip, block the train's route to capture the fugitives. However, Michael Scofield and Lincoln Burrows force the driver to keep the train moving, narrowly evading the blockade. Meanwhile, law enforcement receives reports of 4 individuals jumping from the moving train. When the police apprehend them, they discover that they are not the fugitives. The real group, Michael, Lincoln, Sarah Tancredi, and Paul Kellerman, sneaks off the train and escapes undetected into Chicago. In the suburbs, Teabag grows increasingly paranoid. When a visitor unexpectedly arrives at Susan Hollander's home, Teabag decides it's no longer safe and plans to relocate her and her children to another city against their will. Meanwhile, Benjamin Franklin and his daughter Dee Dee stop at a cafe. Their moment of peace is interrupted when a mentally ill robber causes a scene. Ben tries to de-escalate the situation calmly, but when things escalate, he subdues the robber and locks him in the bathroom. With the help of bystanders, he and Dee flee before the police arrive, as he is a wanted man, and the police will arrest him. At Fox River, Alexander Mahone pressures the warden to honor Brad Bellick's request for administrative isolation, but the warden refuses. However, Mahone has connections with the company, and he is desperate for leverage, so he offers Bellick freedom in exchange for doing his dirty work. Bellick, seeing no better option, reluctantly agrees. After that, Mahone tracks down Haywire, who is hiding in an abandoned tower. He is terrified of going back to the Fox River, so he climbs to the edge. Mahone is seeing all this, but he is under Kim's orders to eliminate all escapees. That's why he coldly tells Haywire that he can end it himself or be captured. After a tense moment, Haywire chooses to jump, ending his life. Meanwhile, Paul learns that the woman claiming to be President Caroline Reynolds on the phone call is an imposter planted by Kim. That's why his location was leaked to the police officers. Now he realizes that he's been betrayed by the company. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose, he commits to helping the brothers take down the company. The group arrives at the exclusive Chicago club carrying Sarah's key. Inside, Michael and Sarah locate the room where the tape recording is stored. However, they are discovered by security and forced to flee empty-handed. The failure leaves the group frustrated but more determined than ever to find another way to expose the truth. After that, the group discovers that Pope is a member of the exclusive club tied to Sarah's key, so they reach the house of Pope. There, Michael Schofield appeals to the Pope's sense of justice, saying that his brother is literally innocent and it is the Pope's duty to help an innocent victim avoid a lifetime imprisonment. However, this makes no difference to the Pope's sentiments, and he refuses to help. So Michael persuades him to get the recording, and in return, Michael will turn himself in the prison. So now Pope goes to the club and retrieves the tape from there, but he is ambushed by Kim, who tries to confiscate the tape recording. Seeing this, Michael, Lincoln, and Sarah intervene just in time and save Pope from Kim and his men. But Sarah doesn't open the door for Paul, and they all leave him behind. Pope later confirms to Michael that the recording is authentic and will be helpful for him in saving his brother. He assures Michael that they don't need to surrender to the authorities now to expose the company. Meanwhile, Teabag forces Susan Hollander and her children to his childhood home, a place haunted by memories of abuse from his father. There, Teabag locks Susan and her children in the basement, under his own trauma. Struggling with conflicting emotions, Teabag ultimately decides to let her and her children go, but the experience leaves him shattered. He calls the police and tells them that a mother with her children are captive in an abandoned house. When the police come there to save the trio, Teabag himself has gone far away alone, but still, it looks like he loves Susan much. On the other hand, Benjamin Franklin takes his daughter Dee Dee to a hospital after her condition worsens, but he can't get the proper treatment for his daughter because he is a wanted person. Then he goes to a homeless shelter and tries to bribe the doctor for treating Dee Dee. At first, he refuses to let the doctor use anesthetics, fearing the risk, but her pain compels him to relent. Realizing he can't keep running with her, he strikes a deal with Mahone. The deal is that Franklin will deliver Michael Schofield in exchange for his daughter's freedom and medical care. Elsewhere, Sucre reunites with Maricruz Delgado, though they are being pursued by the security personnel. They come to their native house in the village and start living a new life, knowing that they both are going to become parents soon. Meanwhile, Michael, Lincoln, and Sarah listen to the recording and realize it could prove Lincoln's innocence. Lincoln contacts a lawyer connected to Aldo's group and sets up a meeting with him. To ensure safety, Lincoln checks that the man isn't being followed before leading him to Michael, but he finds that the person is faking his identity and actually is planted by Kim. There are some behind his back and also microphones planted on his body. Sarah also becomes suspicious of the lawyer's identity when she is approached by Bruce Bennett. Bennett convinces her that he isn't working for the company anymore and helps her track down the real lawyer. But before Sarah and Bennett can warn Michael, he uncovers the deception himself and escapes with Lincoln just before the trap is sprung. The lawyer listens to the recording but reveals disappointing news. He says that the recording is good, but its date is not original, so it can't prove that the recording was actually taken after the death of the Stedman. But he also adds that while its contents won't exonerate Lincoln, it could incriminate President Caroline Reynolds. The brothers decide to use it as leverage to blackmail Reynolds into granting a presidential pardon for them. Meanwhile, Teabag creates a new identity by killing a doctor and then boards a flight to Mexico with a bag full of cash. Then we see Sucre and Maricruz visiting his aunt, but their happiness is short-lived as Bellick is pressuring Sanz into revealing Sucre's location. Elsewhere, we see Paul, who is now sorry for his own previous work for the president and the company. company, so he bids an emotional farewell to his sister, as he is going to take a big step in his life now. He resolves to assassinate President Reynolds himself, this time in order to end the company altogether. Meanwhile, Franklin is present in the prison and Alex Mahone is continuously pressuring him to find Michael. Franklin is desperate for help, so he sends multiple messages to Michael Scofield's website, but receives no response. Seeing this, Alex Mahone closes in and orders Franklin to kill himself if he wants a better life for his daughter and wife. The following morning, when Franklin attempts to hang himself in despair, he is rescued by guards. His situation takes a surprising turn when he is interviewed by Agent Wheeler, who works for Internal Affairs and is investigating Mahone's illegal activities. On the other hand, Michael contacts President Reynolds with a message about the recording. Before Reynolds can act, Michael is kidnapped by Kim and his agents, who begin interrogating him. At the same time, Paul quietly leaves the scene and is in a position to kill the president with his sniper gun. As Kim abuses Michael, the president comes there and sends Kim outside. Michael tells the president that he has something against her and will leak it to the media if she doesn't give them a presidential pardon by making an announcement in just an hour. He calls his brother Lincoln and plays the recording over the phone, exposing an incestuous relationship between Reynolds and Stedman. Left with no choice, Reynolds decides to pardon Michael and Lincoln to silence the scandal. Meanwhile, T-Bag, who is now in Mexico, gets into a fight with a bag full of money. He even gets into a fight with the guard while stealing his own bag from the airport. Sucre watches the news and sees T-Bag's location at the airport, so he decides to retrieve the stolen money. However, when Sucre finally goes to get the bag, Bellick apprehends him. He reveals that he knows about the money's true location and has plans of his own. On the other hand, Alex Mahone tracks down Sarah to the motel where she is staying. There, he asks her about the location of Michael, but she doesn't reveal anything. So, instead of apprehending her directly, he allows her to escape as part of his plan. Unknown to her, Agent Lang is following Sarah on the order of Alex Mahone to pinpoint her location. Meanwhile, as President Reynolds prepares for a press conference, Kim approaches her and asks her not to do anything foolish in front of the public. When she doesn't listen to him, Kim threatens her with exposure to her other dark secrets. Under pressure, Reynolds gets in front of the public and abruptly announces her retirement, saying that she has been diagnosed with malignant cancer and can't serve her nation anymore. This announcement has made Michael Scofield's blackmail plan completely useless. With no other options, Michael and Lincoln decide to move forward with their escape. They have no choice but to disappear forever. The brothers board a ship bound for Panama where they plan to regroup and await Sarah. However, Sarah is still being tailed by Agent Lang. She lies to Michael that she has already boarded the ship so that Michael can go safely without worrying about her. She herself gets captured by the FBI. Meanwhile, Internal Affairs Agent Sullins offers Franklin a deal. Franklin has to testify against Alex Mahone in exchange for witness protection for himself and his family. Franklin reluctantly agrees, as he is worried that Mahone will come after his family if he does this, but Agent Sullins assures him that he will be protected in any case. On the other hand, Kim is under growing pressure, so he seeks advice from an elderly superior of the company who agrees to allow Mahone to disappear after completing his mission. He suggests eliminating everyone in the case one by one. T-Bag reaches Panama and goes further out of control. He murders a prostitute who insults Hollander. Then, he narrowly escapes Sucre and Bellick and continues to evade capture. Sucre tries to shake off Bellick, but Bellick reveals that Maricruz is being held captive and won't be freed until he gets his share of the stolen money. Michael Scofield and Lincoln Burrows have also reached Panama. They acquires the yacht Michael purchased before his incarceration. Together with Lincoln, they are about to go far away from this troublesome life. But just before they leave, Michael Scofield receives a message from Sucre on his website, revealing T-Bag's location. But we see that the account is being used by Alex Mahone, and this information is posted by him to trap Michael. But Michael can do anything for his friends, so he leaves Lincoln behind and heads to the motel where T-Bag is staying. There, he reunites with Sucre and Bellick. Now, the trio again agrees to work together to achieve their goals. They start to keep an eye on T-Bag, who is being protected by 2 private bodyguards, but the trio devises a plan to get rid of the bodyguards. After tracking T-Bag to another location, they find a terrible scene, a corpse left behind by T-Bag, who wants to frame the trio in this murder. Soon, the police come there, and T-Bag tries to flee, carrying the money. But during the chaos, Bellick is arrested while the others escape. Sucre and Michael have T-Bag in their custody. Meanwhile, Alex Mahone, who has been tailing Michael, is confronted by Lincoln. He seeks vengeance for their father's death at Mahone's hands. The encounter delays Mahone long enough for Michael and Sucre to make their next move. Elsewhere, Paul tries to commit the unthinkable after his growing failures. He wears his uniform and all the medals he has earned in his lifetime, but when he is about to shoot himself, his pistol jams. Just then, his sister comes there and encourages him to start over, giving him a new perspective on his situation. As T-Bag is being transported to authorities for deportation back to his country, he manages to escape en route to the embassy. He leaves a trail of destruction behind him. As always, Sucre is injured, and the car is destroyed. Michael manages the situation and carries on a chase behind T-Bag. He corners T-Bag into a house and there stabs his hand to the floor before calling the police. He ultimately locks T-Bag up and flees with the bag of money. The authorities apprehend T-Bag into the prison, but Michael and Sucre manage to flee with the money in hand. Back in court, Sarah faces conviction. She is going to be sentenced to 12 years for aiding Michael in his escape plan, but luckily, Paul comes there and redeems himself by appearing as a surprise witness. He testifies in favor of Sarah clearing her name. He says that he had been working on very heinous crimes on the order of President Caroline. Also, it was he who forced Sarah to help Michael escape. He had the orders to kill Sarah at that time. This proves the innocence of Sarah, and she is set free. Paul, in a last act of redemption, exposes his motives and provides evidence of Lincoln's and Sarah's innocence. Though Sarah's charges are dropped, Kellerman is arrested shortly after. On the other hand, Michael returns to the yacht with the bag of money but can't find Lincoln there. There he receives a call from Mahone, who tells that he has captured Lincoln as Lincoln is very bad at killing someone, though he had a gun in his hands. Now, Mahone demands that Michael bring the money and the boat in exchange for his brother's life. Michael Schofield agrees to deliver the boat and money to Alex Mahone. However, Mahone is growing desperate. He devises a plan and enlists the help of a local drug cartel to turn the tables on Mahone. On the other hand, Mahone also contacts the police to report a murder, setting off a series of chaotic events. Kim is also informed by Alex Mahone, and he is coming to take down the brothers himself. So Mahone is planning to kill Kim himself and then frame the brothers in the murder. In this way, he will be free from every kind of threat and will live a peaceful life. When Kim and his men arrive, they quickly understand the plan of Mahone by seeing the brothers still alive. So, a violent confrontation erupts between his forces and Mahone. Amid the confusion, the brothers manage to escape while Mahone boards the boat. At the next bank, when Mahone gets off his boat, the police arrive there. They do a routine check and find cocaine hidden on the boat. This leads to Mahone's arrest. Elsewhere, T-Bag's connections to the company are revealed too, but his schemes ultimately lead to his capture and imprisonment. The brothers regroup and aboard a yacht Michael had purchased. There they are surprised to see that they have been joined by Sarah, who delivers the good news. Lincoln has been exonerated thanks to Paul's testimony. However, their celebration is cut short when Kim suddenly appears there. He is pointing his gun straight at Lincoln and wants to kill him. Though Lincoln gives him the bag full of money, it doesn't have any value for Kim. He just wants to wipe off all those people who could be a danger to the company. Just when he is about to shoot Lincoln, Sarah shoots Kim, and before they can process the situation, the authorities close in. They all run and try to hide, but there is no way out now. They have to surrender in front of the authorities. In a shocking twist, Michael decides to take the fall for Sarah. He fakes a kidnapping of Sarah to stage her escape. The authorities arrest Michael, though Sarah continuously says that she killed the man and not Michael. After a few days, as the brothers and Sarah part ways, Sarah vanishes before Lincoln can find her. In other developments, Bellick forces Sucre to help him escape captivity, but their plan is intervened as chaos happens there too. Back to Paul, who is being transported into a police van to the prison. Some masked attackers come there and kill Paul as he already knows that it is going to happen to him, as he has talked about the system so openly. The season ends on a dark note, as Michael and Mahone find themselves imprisoned in Sona, a notorious Panamanian prison. In the final moments, the general in that prison ominously declares that this was exactly what the company had planned all along.